welcome everybody. If you're new to these master classes, I want to first kind of start with the intention of even doing master classes and the intention actually of the Facebook group. Because I actually had this great message recently, because I invited somebody to the Facebook community, and they said, you know, I get these invites all the time, and every group I'm in is just spammy and just being sold to all the time. And so I thought I'd start this actually off with the intention of the group in general, if that's okay with you, Anthony, just for a second.
Love it. Let's go.
Here's the intention of the Facebook group. I had this crazy idea. I said, we obviously have a program that we do for coaches, but I said, there's still people out there that maybe aren't ready to join the program or not ready to invest themselves yet. And I said, what if we can still get them outstanding results? What if we can still get them to the point of having a successful coaching business that they love, literally for free, just coaches helping coaches. And so this Facebook group is not a place where, again, you're going to find a whole bunch of spam messages and people trying to pitch you and this and that. It's literally supposed to be what a community is supposed to be, which is a group of individuals that all have a goal that we're all pursuing together, a true mastermind, if you will. And so the reason for these master classes is so I could take the people that are in the program, outstanding coaches that have something worth giving to the community, and just to chat with them. And today I have my buddy, my friend, client, and brother from another mother, Anthony Garcia, here with us talking about stories. And so I wanted to start this off actually with why, again, it's important, especially as entrepreneurs, to talk about the stories we tell ourselves. And I was thinking about this earlier, right? So I was having a cup of coffee and contemplating the idea of stories. And here's what I came up with. This is super, super obscure, but I think you'll dig it. So
I love it.
I started thinking about a story I tell myself, which is I don't like country. And I started asking myself, why don't I like country? Like, where did
I tell myself that same story, by the way, but go ahead.
But I started thinking, right? Like, not that I'm going to change that fact, but it was this thought I had of going, okay, where did that story come from? Did I just hear one country song and go, nope, the whole genre sucks. The whole thing is terrible. And I started thinking, okay, what if how many opportunities, how many experiences that could have served me, could have enjoyed had I been open to the idea that it's not that I don't like country in general. I just didn't like the one or two songs that I heard. Now, again, silly example, but again, we do these things all the time where we create stories around us that we pick up from other people or whatever, and then we all find evidence to support that. And I said, again, going back to the country example, I started thinking about how many country songs that I heard a snippet of, and I go, sucks, it's country, it's garbage, but not giving it the opportunity, right? So anyway, just to get us started in the idea of stories, first, I actually want to know this. What actually led you to even start investigating the idea of the stories we create, and maybe even give like a definition of what we're talking about a little bit?
Yeah, man. So I think from the moment you are aware, right? The moment that you can start having a conversation, the moment you can start tracking, even probably before that, before you can even verbalize your thoughts, we are connecting with stories, right? Think about from the age of a toddler in front of a television watching Sesame Street or whatever it is you're watching. We connect ourselves innately with what stories are unfolding in front of us. And what we do, regardless of the genre, regardless of what the content of the story is, we naturally place ourselves in that story, right? I'm willing to bet that you've gone, especially you, but most of us who've gone to an action film, right? And it's heavily martial arts based, and there's these fight scenes. You are not fighting, but when the punches land, you wince, you move. And then when you walk out of the theater, tell me I'm wrong, but is there not a pep in your step when you leave that theater?
Hype.
You had nothing to do with the action. You were not there. You didn't get bloody. You didn't get sweaty, but you walk out of there with your chest a little higher, feeling a little encouraged, feeling a little emboldened. It's because we are innately wired to connect with story, right? We've been telling stories since we were etching them on cave walls, so we're wired for it. So here's the thing. I could give you data. I'll give you an example. You're a giving person, right? You open this conversation framing why you're doing this, right? You charge for the work that you do. and deservedly so. But you wanted to be generous with this for people who aren't quite ready to make that leap. Well, there's an organization called Charity Water. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. And their whole mission is to provide clean drinking water for people who don't have access to it. And if you don't know the numbers for how many people still don't have access to clean drinking water, it's staggering. So what people have tried to do over the years is to give data. I can give you data points as to why, how many people are without clean water, how many people are dying every day. Now, you'd think if you heard thousands and millions of people are becoming ill and ultimately dying from something that is easy as clean drinking water, something that we have access to. We can walk into any given room at any point in our day and turn on water and have access to clean water. There's people who are walking miles every day to drink out of mud puddles to survive. Now, if I just present data to show you the amount, the numbers, and what regions of the world people are dealing with this issue, you'll care. But what Charity Water understood was they're not going to tell you how many thousands and millions of people are impacted. They're going to follow one person. You're going to follow one little girl from her home in a village, walking 1 mile on foot with a jug of water on her head, not able to go to school because she has to gather water for the family. You're going to follow her trek. And then when you get to that, to where she gets the water, you're going to see that's essentially a mud puddle and that she has to fill that jar, fill that jug and make her way home just so her family can boil the water for cleanliness and use that water to cook. You're going to care so much more about the cause of getting people clean drinking water than you would if I gave you the staggering data that most of us think would move the needle. We are moved by stories. And the interesting thing is, we experience our lives as reality. But if you start to pull on the threads, our lives as we know them are nothing more than a collection of stories. That's it. That's what our lives are. They're stories. So I'll give you an example, Raina. Have you ever talked to somebody, and maybe you've done this yourself, I don't know, but have you ever talked to somebody who told you they weren't creative?
Yeah, me.
Do you say that?
I used to say that, yeah.
So you used to say that. What changed?
I changed. I started realizing that I just create differently.
Okay.
Like I looked at other people and the way that they create, and I was like, well, I don't create like that. So I'm not a creative. But then when I started seeing like my content, how it was affecting people, the way that I speak, hell, even doing jujitsu, right? Like really quick example of like jujitsu, we always say you don't invent moves, you discover them. And so I realized that I used to think I'm not creative as a martial artist, but then you look at it and go, well, it's unique to me. So I did create something, right? So anyway, I just kind of shifted. I don't know exactly what happened, but I realized that I do create. It's just maybe not like you or somebody else, you know?
Yeah, so that's fantastic. You're able to stumble upon that. But I have talked to so many adults who make the phrase, whether they're going to give a presentation or they're sketching something out on the whiteboard or they have to draw a picture to give an example or whatever it might be. And they say, I'm not creative, forgive me. I have never met a child who's ever said, I'm not creative.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get that story. All they knew is somebody handed them crayons, gave them paper. Hell, my daughter will take, the other day she took an egg carton and tore it apart and started sketching on it, putting stickers on it. Here's I'm going to use this for my baby dolls. It's going to be there. She created 5 different things out of an egg carton.
Yeah.
Because nobody told her that she wasn't creative. So somewhere along the lines, you turn in something and somebody says, oh, that's not very good. Or you draw a picture and you show it to their friends and they go, oh, I could draw so much better than that. And in that moment, you adopt a story that, not that maybe I need to improve my drawing skills, that I can practice and get better. You take that and it creates a story in your mind that you're not creative. And when that story is
creative is, right? Like we created, like I created a story around creative is when you can draw really well. Being creative is when you can come up with something. Like I thought that was being creative and that's it. Nothing else. You know what I mean? If you can't play jazz, you're not creative. Like that's the story I just created for, I don't know where the hell that came from.
Well, and it comes, most of us, unless we know very early on we have some kind of like fine art skills or musical talent that comes just almost innately to us. Most of us get into that rut of thinking. It's a story that we adopt. But there's this fantastic book called Creative Confidence, and I recommend it to anybody. But in there's a story that they were talking to the Dalai Lama's consultant, I believe it was. And they were talking about the Tibetan translation for the word creative or being creative. And the closest they could get in their language to creative or to be creative was the word natural. And the interesting thing about that is creativity is our natural sense. For instance, you create drama for yourself every day. You create stories out of thin air. Somebody said something and you created an entire soap opera out of what they said. Now, chances are it has no bearing in reality, but you created a story. You go to bed at night, your brain creates some of the most elaborate landscapes that you could ever imagine while you're sleeping. So we adopt and inherit stories throughout our lives. And so my passion has been uncovering the stories we tell ourselves and recognizing that we have the ability to rewrite our stories. We have the ability to recreate. In some cases, we can just scrap stories altogether. And I think when you start to realize that you're swimming in stories, that other people have created stories for you and you've created stories for yourself. For instance, here's a story. Here's a story that most of us grew up with. In this family, we ... Mm-hmm. And that story is given to you. And so you carry that, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, throughout your life. And if you become a parent later on, chances are you'll pass that story along to somebody else. So what happens to somebody's life when they realize they can completely edit and rewrite and scrap stories that aren't working for them?
So was there like a moment where this became like a purpose for you? Like, cause like for me, you and I are similar. I think you and I get along so well is because my purpose is to help people realize they deserve more. That's like my overarching vision for everything that I do. And part of that is freeing people from the stories, freeing people from the circumstance, stories, and excuses. And for me, what got me really obsessed with stories was because I was lost. Like I'm not lost. I was stuck. And there was a story going around of because the way that I grew up, because my father was in prison, because I struggled in school, I wasn't going to make it. And I looked at it. And again, even at a young age, I said, I looked at it again. I don't know where it came from, but I looked at it and said, I have two options. I can continue this story and end up nowhere, or I can just rewrite the whole shit, right? Decide who I am. And then literally overnight, like I remember the moment, it was 7th grade. I had E's and D's in my report card. I don't know how in the world they even let me go to 8th grade. I couldn't even finish football season, wrestling season because my grades were so bad, right? 8th grade comes around. I'm a straight A student all the way up until senior year. So the change was literally, I stopped calling myself stupid and I started saying, no, I just work really hard. And then started doing that. So that was my moment. And then I think later on in life, when I became an entrepreneur, I started seeing the same stories. I started seeing entrepreneurs I was working with constantly telling themselves stories that was not like making them not be successful. So that was for me. For you, what was your moment to realize, oh, fuck, that's a story. Oh, look at you. You're doing the same thing I was doing. I'm going to help you kind of get unplugged, so to speak.
Yeah, for me, I don't know that there's one event, but I grew up in a religious environment. In my house, my friends, like everybody, kind of my circle was very religious, specifically Christian, right? And if you look at the Bible, it's full of stories. And some of these stories are used to inspire. Some of these stories are used to scare the hell out of kids, literally. And you get all these stories, but I was somebody who was always curious and kind of poking the box a little bit. And why do we think this? And why do we view this? And I got to a point that I started reading outside of my tradition. And what you realize is that some of the same stories in this context are mirrored in other contexts, right? So someone like Joseph Campbell, who was fantastic, his study was mythology. And he lays out the connections and the threads between really all the spiritual traditions and just ancient storytelling in general. There's a thread and there's a theme to almost every one. And so once I was given the story as a kid that this is the truth. And at some point, I started bumping into other stories that were very eerily similar, that were making different conclusions. And I started, now all of a sudden, it's kind of like you're unplugged from the matrix. And you got to look around and you have to figure out, what does this mean? Like, am I going to have an existential crisis, or am I going to use this to realize that these stories, these ancient stories that are still holding on to us culturally, are tools for us to be able to use going forward? There's some wisdom hidden and tucked into all of these different stories. In some way, they're competing, but in other ways, it's just the story of humanity trying to figure out what it means to exist. That's what stories are. We are all trying to figure out what it means to exist. So I've always been fascinated by that. And so I naturally study stories. I'm the nerd, Raylan, who will watch a movie. And back when DVDs were a thing, I'd watch the movie again with the director commenting over the top of it. And when I wrote this scene, I was thinking about this. And when I did this, because I want to know how people come up with the stories, how they craft the story. So story in general has just been interesting to me. And then I started to see the overlap that we are living in. I'll give you a perfect example. If you're watching this and you're thinking about business, or how you can scale your business, or wanting to get into business, whatever it might be, at the end of the day, money is just a story, period. Money is not an actual thing. Like humanity, at some point, there was a bunch of villagers bumping into each other and said, yo, if you give me those berries, I'll give you these rocks so you can build your house. And then that story just scaled to, okay, I'm going to trade these shells. These shells are pretty shiny. You like these shells? All right, well, let me marry your daughter and I'll give you these shells. And then it moved to, well, shells are kind of lame now. What about these precious gems and diamonds? And then all of a sudden we came to gold, as in the whole entire time, something that was accessible to almost anybody. A certain amount of people figured out how to gather more and use that to bargain their way through life. And we don't think, like, obviously cash isn't what it used to be, right? Most of us use our phones or our credit cards, and now we've got cryptocurrency. But have you ever stopped to think of walking into a gas station and you hand somebody a piece of paper that the group collectively has just decided has value, and that's how you walk out with a bag of chips and a pop? That you walk into a store and hand somebody a piece of paper. Now, here's why this matters. Here's why this is relevant. The suggestion is not that the story doesn't matter, because money can be an incredible tool for transformation. Money brings people out of horrible situations, right? So I'm not devaluing it, but when you realize it's just a story, it takes some of the power away from what it feels like if maybe I don't have as much as I want right now. Somebody had Michael Neal.
Right?
What's
like,
that?
There's so much weight that we put into money. Like there's tons of even clients we have in the program, or people just talk to in general, have this money issue, right? Where it's like, I don't want to charge this because what if, and then there's a story. What if they can't afford it? Like I'm a sales guy, right? I used to teach a lot of people sales. Well, I still do. And one of the common things I get is, what if they can't afford it? And it's like, why are you writing that story? It's not your story to write. It's your job to give them that opportunity, and then that's it. Like, that's it, right?
And we see money as this scarce thing, and we realize that the whole thing is made up, right? Like there's no longer somebody sitting in a vault with a bunch of stuff and, oh, you take too much of that, we're not going to have much left to go around. But we tell ourselves a scarcity story about it, and so our relationship to money gets converted, right, or perverted rather. So going back to my original story, right? Growing up, I was told that the love of money is the root of all evil, right? And so money became this dirty thing that it's nice if you have it, but don't start caring too much about it. Michael Neal, who's another fantastic coach, I love the way he frames it. He says, money is never going to give you security. And if you don't believe me, ask the billionaire who still doesn't think they have enough. Ask the millionaire who's like, man, if only I had a couple million more, I'd feel like I could take a break. So if money provided security, if that was a real story, then we wouldn't have that situation. So he says what he likes to do is money is a tool. So what would it look like to swap out the word money with hammer or screwdriver? So for instance, insert that story. The love of hammers is the root of all evil. It completely changes the meaning when you change the story around what money is. Money is a tool that gives people time. Money is a tool that gives people resources and the ability to help themselves and to help other people. And when you take that story and rewrite it just slightly, our relationship to it is no longer neurotic or nervous or weird, and we can just see it for what it is, a made-up tool that helps us navigate life. That's it.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that luckily, again, I had a really good mentor when I first got into sales, and I had an issue with bringing up money because I didn't come from money, right? Like we were poor, and so I went from poor to I was selling these like $20,000 packages, and remember thinking like, man, like $20,000 is a lot of fucking money. Like I'd never seen that much money before. So how am I going to add? They don't have this just on hand. And never forget, my mentor was like, he didn't give me any crazy wisdom. He just says, all I want you to say is, are you going to pay in a card or cash? And then I want you to shut up. That's it. Just say, it's going to be this amount of money today. Do you want to do that in cash or cards? Up to you. How do you want to do that? And just shut up and watch what happens. And so I did it for the first time. The guy just goes, oh, card, and hands me the card. And I was like, wait, what just happened? And again, there was no big wisdom sharing, but then I realized, oh, like if I just pull myself out of it and just give them the option, there's no meaning. There's no like, hey, I know this is a lot of, like, that's what I used to do. And this is what a lot of people used to do right now is, hey, look, I know this is a lot of money, but like, and now I just planted in your head the story that I'm telling myself, which is this is a lot of money versus just leaving it alone and going, hey, this is what it is. How do you want to take care of it? It's up to you. Right.
Exactly.
And now you're free from it. So it's interesting. Again, talking to you, and I know that I told you 20 minutes. We got about 5 minutes left. If there's anything else you want to mention, and for those that don't know, I know there's a few people watch right now. We got a lot of great comments in the Facebook group. If you're interested in seeing more of Anthony and learning the stories that you tell yourself, come visit us at the workshop this Saturday. I'll drop a link. It's going to be amazing, and I'm really excited for it. And I think even for me, and I think maybe this will help someone, I'm not really sure. But even at the level at which I am at, and some people think that I'm going to really like whatever, I have stories that still hold me back, that I'm constantly going, well, where did this is a small example, a really silly example, but a small one at that. And there's a story I've been telling myself, which is like, we're new at this thing we have. We have this new offer. We're new. We need to charge a certain amount when we first get started, right? And I sat there and I looked at it and analyzed it, and I go, who decided this amount of money? Like I did. Right. I just pulled the number out of my butt. Like there's no reason for it. So then literally on Monday, we increased the price by double. Okay.
Yeah.
I get on a sales call with somebody. We're talking through it, and I go, hey, this is the price. No mention of what it used to be. This is just the price. And again, to me, paying that a month for our new offer is a lot of money. It's nothing to scoff at, right? We're still providing a lot of value, but still. And she just like, all right, cool. That makes sense. What? So again, even at I've sold a lot, and I have made a good amount of money in my career. And still, I have these stories that I have to go, why am I holding back here? Why am I waiting to do this? Like, think about it. You know how many people that are probably in our Facebook group right now that want to elevate, want to go to the next level, but they have this story they keep telling themselves, which is, again, subconsciously otherwise, I'm not ready to go to that level yet. I'm not prepared yet. I'm not this.
I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified. Yeah.
It's
100%.
literally insane to me. And it's still, again, what's even more interesting is the amount of people that may even be watching right now or watch this replay later and go, no, I got the stories down. I don't have anything that's holding me back. I'm good. And I think if we could take any lesson away, and hopefully this challenges some people and the way that they're thinking is, if you are not where you want to be right now, it's just the stories. If you
It's
are
just
not,
the story.
if that's it, and if you are, and you're like, dude, I'm good, like I'm happy in my life, I'm making the money I want to make, I'm good to my wife, I'm good to my kids, I'm good here, I'm good everywhere. If that's you, you might be fucking Jesus. But outside of
Come
that,
teach the next one.
yeah, come teach us your ways, because we all have those stories, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say too, like if you have goals and aspirations that seem incredibly lofty right now, you can, and with the right focus, you will go after those things and achieve those. But the fascinating thing for me, and what I'm always going on about, is that there's a way you can rewrite your story today. Like there's a story shift that can happen in your life today that is no longer someday. It's no longer when I get here, and it's no longer if that wouldn't have happened to me then, or if I was given this opportunity, I would have. When you start getting rid of those stories, you can find a level of contentment and a feeling of achievement without doing anything to your bank account, without doing anything to your circle of friends, without adding or subtracting a specific relationship. You can have those shifts right now that completely transform the way you look at yourself and the world around you, that brings a level of fulfillment that nothing else can. And when you realize that the only thing you had to do to get there was change some of the stories that you've been telling yourself, it is so liberating. It's so transformative that you have the power to author your experience. And so if you're interested in more about that, it's definitely something we're going to be diving into on Saturday. That is my passion. I just love the fact that it's not about our circumstance.
Mhm.
Our experience is totally created right here in the stories that we tell ourselves. It's totally created in the way we view the world, and that is nothing more than a collection of stories. So I love it, man.
I think, again, I'm really excited for Saturday. I'm going to be there with a notepad and paper, because again, I'm one of the things that I constantly remind myself, and I had a mentor, Shane, who talked about this, was that every story, because it used to be this thing we say, does that story serve you? And I think that does still play a role. But then he mentioned something to me. He goes, well, no, every story serves you. The question isn't, does this story serve you? The question is, does this story serve you in the way that you want it to?
Interesting.
Because technically, right, like I have this thing where if like, for example, I know people that are like, I'm not ready to post online yet, or I don't want to do this, I don't want to make this. And it's like, there's a story it is serving them. It's protecting them and their ego. It's protecting them and what may come, and it's serving you. The question is it serving you the way that you want it to? And if it's not, again, for those that are watching, come Saturday and let's tear down some fucking stories, because man, there's a lot that we could learn. Anthony, thank you for taking the time today. I know this is
Thank you, man.
Watching, man, and I can't wait for Saturday. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right, man. Good stuff. We'll see you.
Everybody watching.